Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Uber Ninja. Now, this is the first video that I'm making under my Uber Ninja account. Granted, I am not a stranger in the video making market here on YouTube. But this basically is going to be just nothing but Uber stuff. And the first thing that I want to talk about is the big elephant in the room, which is not really even a big elephant in the room. What I want to talk about really is the price drops that happened last January of 2016, and how things have been going on since that happened, and my thoughts and ideas concerning that situation. Now, it's no real big secret that 100 cities in the United States and Canada have dropped their price fares. Uber has said that the idea behind it is to decrease the fares in order to gain more riders during this winter slump that we're having. And so far as a lot of people have been seeing, it's not working. And the reason I think why it's not working is because of the fact that people are getting angry to a point where they are protesting, striking, threatening the company, driving less, driving only when it's surging, not driving at all, or just going to Lyft if possible to drive for Uber's competition. Everybody basically is just crying about this shit and not really giving it a try. Now, granted, I'm pretty green in this industry. I've only been driving for 6 months. When I started driving, it was just after there was another price drop in Grand Rapids, Michigan from $1 a mile to 75 cents a mile. And then a couple months after I signed in and became an Uber driver, they changed the service fee for using the Uber app from 20 to 28% in September of 2015, and shortly after, the Safe Ride fee was increased from $1 to $1.55. Of course, the Safe Ride fee really doesn't do anything to what we make. They take 100% of that no matter what. So really, the reality is on that one is that the rider gets screwed and not the driver. The only thing that's really been screwing the drivers is the increase of the service fee and the decrease in the rates. Now, they basically kind of kiss our ass, or they want to try to make it look like they're kissing our ass by giving us the guaranteed fares. So we have to do a certain amount of trips in a certain amount of time. We're offered a certain amount of money per hour if we're not able to make that much. But if we go over that, then we aren't granted shit. And then when it gets to a point where more often than not, people are not getting the fare guarantees, the bump up, then they disappear. That's basically how it works. I don't know if people have realized that yet, but that is how it works. Once it starts getting to a point, use common logic, use common knowledge, use common logic. The minute that the Uber fares start to increase to a point where you can't earn any less than what they're being offered, then they're not going to do shit. And so, eventually it's just going to get to eventually it gets to a point where nobody's getting a bump up for because of the guaranteed fares, and that's why the fares go away. But that's not fully what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the fact that since the prices have dropped, people have been protesting, people have been striking, people have been threatening the company to get their fares back up. People have been driving more to try to get the same amount that they've been getting before, or, if they're not even paying attention to how much they usually try to make, or anything of that nature. People are going out of control. And the protests aren't working, the strikes aren't working, threats aren't working. The only thing that people think that they can do in order to make Uber see the fact is by driving a lot less or driving when it surges, which makes no sense in all honesty, because if you're not driving, somebody else is going to replace you because people are being offered all of this fast cash in order to invite another driver. It doesn't make any fucking sense for you to not drive, because you're just going to get replaced for the amount of hours that you're not driving when you usually do. Driving only when it's surging does nothing, because Uber still takes their 20, 28, 10, 15% cut from whatever you're getting. It doesn't matter. And driving for Lyft is possibly the only thing that would actually make it so people at Uber would start to sweat. But Lyft is only worth like 10% of what Uber's worth. Lyft is pretty much worth like $4 billion. As opposed to Uber is worth $62.5 billion. Thanks to us, the drivers, because of the service fees and the safe rides fees. We're the reason why Uber is as much as it is. So nothing's working, and the drivers are still pissed off. We feel unappreciated. We feel duped being into this, going into this job. And it's mainly because of the fact that a bunch of us were offered something along the lines of getting a vehicle specifically for this job. So they feel kind of trapped into working insane amount of hours just to make the, payments, which mainly are going to go to the lien holders, which are fucking shysters anyways, the ones that work alongside Uber. So, what to do? The only thing that we can really do is we can just try to send submission ideas to Uber about what we could do in order to make the drivers happy. There's got to be something that can be done to make to appease the drivers. So I've been racking my brain for the last month, and I came up with a couple of ideas. The first idea I actually got from a rider who told me back in the day, before Uber was actually a thing. She was getting a taxi cab in Chicago, and she had to go to the outskirts of the city to go to a hotel that she was lodged to stay at, and she was charged an extra 50%. When asked about this, she ended up getting the reply that they're only authorized to drive outside, to drive within the city limits of Chicago. If you have to go to the outskirts of Chicago, well, then, you're not going to get any money on the drive back. You can't go through some of the subsidiary cities surrounding Chicago to pick up fares. You're only allowed to work in Chicago. So that made sense, because the extra 50% is the commission for the trip back to Chicago. So I submitted that idea over to Uber to have us do the same thing. Now in Grand Rapids, there's quite a few times where people are using Uber to drive down to a small city called Shelbyville, which is about a half hour south of Grand Rapids. And at Shelbyville, there's a Indian casino, Gun Lake Casino. So people are actually driving over there. My girlfriend has done it twice already. There was one time where my girlfriend actually had to drive all the way up to Mount Pleasant to drop off somebody. She picked up somebody in Grand Rapids and drove them all the way up to Mount Pleasant, which is about an hour and 40-minute drive north. And she didn't get any commission out of this. She should have gotten at least an extra 50% added onto the bill. So I submitted that idea to Uber, where if you go from, the major city to BFE, basically, you should be getting a 50% extra commission. In this case, it would be an extra 1.5 surge rate. So if the drop-off location is on the outskirts of a city that does not have Uber, then it should be automatically bumped up to a 1.5 surge rate. Now, the second thing that was given as an idea for submission was an idea about decreasing the service fees. And this one I actually thought was pretty cool. I've talked about it to a couple of riders, and they like that idea. I've talked to people in various group pages, mainly for Michigan, West Michigan, Grand Rapids, and the Uber Man Driver Network group page. And I've been getting a lot more positive reactions rather than negative. The most negative that I've been getting are the ones from the Uberman Driver Network group page. It seems like a lot of those people have given up hope and are starting to hate life, which makes it perfect for them to drive taxi cabs, in all honesty. But here's the idea. Okay, I explained to them all of this shit that I already said to you guys about how, we're protesting, we're striking, we're threatening we're threatening Uber, we're driving less, or we're just driving for the competition. And the reason why is because we have done so much to make Uber the juggernaut that it is, a $62.5 billion industry, and we have nothing to show for it. We have nothing to show for it except for, the bombardment of emails suggesting that we, invite other drivers for a quick $200, which doesn't add up anyways, because we may get $200, but that's like basically, saying that we'll take $200 right now as opposed to $250 in the next 2 months. Because when you invite a driver, that's more competition for you, and that's less money in your pocket, and you have nobody to thank but yourself for inviting somebody for that reason. So what I suggested was that we need a milestone of 5,000 trips. And then after you hit the your first 5,000 trips, 1% is removed from the service fee. So if you are currently having a 20% service fee, after 5,000 rides, it should be shaved down to 19. At 10,000 rides, it shaves down to 18, 15,000, 17%, and so on and so forth until it either hits 0% or it hits a certain glass ceiling. I would probably say at most 5%. Uber's still going to make money getting the service fees, the safe rides fees anyways. Now, I told them that if they did this, that would probably make people more compelled to want to go out and drive and try to pick up more rides. Of course, the only thing that's really stopping this as of right now is most recently I've read something about how in New York City they're not allowed to drive any more than 12 hours a day. So, and if they try, then they get deactivated. They get suspended, and if they try it a second time, then they're removed completely from Uber. But I thought about this. I felt that this was a good idea. I submitted the idea to Uber, and the next day I ended up getting a response email saying that the guy thought that my ideas were fucking terrific, especially the one with the 5,000 trips milestone to drop your service fee down to down 1% for every 5,000 trips. Now, I ended up talking to a couple of people in my network area, and they ended up saying that while it's a good idea, they felt like 5,000 trips was a bad thing. Like it's too much. But this is coming from a guy who actually only drives part-time. He only does like 30 trips out of the entire week. I myself make 100 trips on average per week. So it would still take me a year before I actually went down 1%. And it would probably end up evening out because of the length of time that it would take for me to do that. And then once a year, they keep decreasing the fucking fares. So it would probably end up evening out for me in the long run. But nevertheless, I picked 5,000 for a reason. One, it's a good, strong number. If somebody says 4,000, you're like, get the fuck out of here with that. It's not going to work. 5,000 will take a while. If you work full time, it ends up working out for you in the long run. And you'll have it 100 trips a week. There's 52 weeks out of the year. You'll have 1% taken out once, maybe twice a year. And that would actually work out very well. On top of that, I think it would be very selfish of me to say 2,500 rides, because then I already have 2,200 rides under my belt as of right now. And in 3 months, in 3 weeks, I should say, I'd end up getting my first decrease. And on top of that, there are people in San Francisco who have been driving for a very long time, since Uber started. There's probably still people that are out there driving full-time for Uber in San Francisco and have been since they started. So they're probably hitting almost 10,000. So right then and there, that'd already be 1% taken out immediately. And then once they hit 10,000 trips completed from start to finish, A to B, none of the canceled ones work. None of those count on either end, either the ones that you cancel or the rider cancels. And that would work just fine. So they really like the idea. They ended up submitting the idea up to the proper channels, and hopefully I'll be able to get a response as to whether or not it's going to be okay, and if not, I'd like to know why. And some people said that it's a stupid idea. Uber doesn't listen to us and stuff like that, which I concur to that. There was a guy that I talked to in the Uber Man Driver Network who ended up making a mention that he came out with a plan which was basically the exact same platform as Uber Events. And he never got a response out of it. 4 months later, they ended up coming up with Uber Events, and he was never paid commission for it. And it seemed like the butthurt flowed within this guy. And I ended up saying to the guy flat out that I don't care if I get commission for my ideas. I just want to help the community. That's all I want. You know, I don't care about any extra dividends that comes my way. If they come, great. If not, fuck it. I'm actually helping out the Uber driver community. And that, to me, I think is the most important thing, is that we are helping out the community with submitting these ideas. So don't be afraid if you've got ideas to actually submit them, because you never know if they might actually work. And that's the end of my video. That's the end of my rant. I got to get going. I got important things to do. So, see y'all on the flip.